their version of the step-in.
Hey everybody. Everybody can take a seat. Quick word before we start. We're now like 5 minutes over, 6 minutes over. It's really important for us that y'all get here on time. I think we've become more and more relaxed about it, but people are filtering in and then saying hi to everybody and then going to the bathroom and then coming back out and they're already a minute late and then we're starting class 10 minutes late, right? Melissa and Nora and I get down here 9:15, 9 o'clock to set up the room, to make sure that everything's functional. People are arriving here on time, in a lot of instances early. Let's try to be respectful of everybody who's participating in this experience, and just get here on time so we can start on time, right? Thank you, I appreciate it. We're gonna start off with a warm-up today of tying your 3-rope, hands behind tie, or hands in front tie, or however you manage that tie. But like last month, when you were doing a 2-rope, you're going to do it with a specific intention in mind. Before I start this exercise, I want to give you a quick story of something that happened to me a week ago as a reflection and a reminder to everyone that the thing that we're doing is risky and dangerous. So last week on Sunday, one of our former students lives in San Diego and teaches, former graduate of the CEL program, teaches a similarly styled class to a set of, I think, 10 or 15 students, couples in San Diego. Asked me to come down and to do the history class that I'll do for y'all in a couple of months for his students. So drove down on Sunday, had brunch with friends, went in the afternoon to his place, did the class, it was great, had some good discussion, lots of great questions. I got done, everybody's sort of leaving, and he's like, oh hey, I'm about to teach the 3rd rope variation class, so the class that y'all will all have next month. Could you give me a couple of variations just to add to my repertoire so I can show and give examples of more things? And I was like, yeah, sure, totally. And one of his students was like, oh, I'll be tied for that so you can do that demonstration. I was like, great. I'd never tied with this person. This person had a really high context on rope, ton of photos of them being in rope, of being suspended, of a whole bunch of other things. Talked to them about what their preferences were in a hands behind tie, talked to them about how their arms were set, tied the tie, tied it very gently, fairly loosely, did 5 or 6 different variations of a 3rd rope, and they were like, oh, my hands are feeling a little bit tingly, can you drop my hands? Sure, totally. Opened up the single column tie that all of you know how to tie, dropped their hands down, untied everything else, went on our way. That person has a mild ulnar nerve infringement in their left hand, so their last 2 fingers, their ring finger and pinky finger, while they have feeling in it, they can't completely curl and close them. And that was something that they discovered the next day when they went to drive, and they were like, oh, I can't quite roll my hand around the wheel. So even if you are not doing scene stuff, even if you are not doing suspension, even if you are not doing anything intense, there remains a real risk whenever you tie someone. And it doesn't matter how much experience you have, it doesn't matter how many times you've been in rope, and it doesn't matter how experienced you are in tying. Anytime you interact with rope and a person, there is a risk of an injury, right? So I wanted to take a second, based on my experiences, and remind everyone that the thing that we're doing is dangerous. Because one of the things that that person said to me was, well, is rope ever going to be safe for me again? And my response was, rope was never safe for you. Like, it's fantastic that you felt safe up until this point, but if you've never been injured, you should still realize that this thing is not safe. You are taking a risk every single time you engage in it, both from the tying side and from the being tied side. So I wanted to take a second as a quick reminder to everyone that this is a real dangerous thing that we are doing. Please be aware of that danger. Enjoy the thing that you are enjoying. Don't become so terrified of it that you can't take pleasure in it. But be comfortable with the consequences if a negative outcome occurs, right? Both for the person tying and the person being tied. Any questions? All right. So for the people tying, take a moment to consider what the intention you would like to bring to your 3-rope tie is. So consider, this is the feeling I want to impart. I would probably suggest to make it, as much as you can, a positive, or at least net neutral intention. So some suggestions might be things like possessive, or I want to be careful, or I want to be joyous, or I want to be silly. Any of those things, think of a single word in your mind, and then you're going to tie all 3 ropes of your tie on the person that you are tying with that intention in mind. And remember, that intention is going to extend from how you position that person and how they're sitting, and how you're sitting, and how you approach the first rope, all the way until you take the last rope off of their body and you disengage from the tie as a whole. So you're going to have about 15, 20 minutes to do that. Let's say 20 minutes. So figure out what that intention is and start tying. All right, everybody. I think most everyone has gotten through tying the tie. First and foremost, generally, it's great to watch you all tie. Everybody sort of has their own different approach. Like looking around at people in the room. It's interesting to see what those approaches are. I think there's some places where a lot of people are looking similar that caused me to want to make a couple of notes. So first, and I'm going to do a couple things with Melissa, so if you can get yourself into a position where you can see us, that will be helpful. And I think we've talked about this, but making sure that you're differentiating your position from the person that you're tying as an expression of the intention that you're trying to exhibit or inhabit. A person that I noted that's super good at this is June. June is great at not just positioning themselves behind the person that they're tying, but relocating their body and then using their legs as sort of a way to not just interact with the back of somebody, but interact with the whole of the person's body. So make sure that you're considering how your body is positioned in the distance of your body in deference to the person that you're tying. The other thing is, while you are moving the rope, that is an opportunity to touch the person that you are interacting with.
If that's the relationship.
If that's the relationship that you have, but in a way that is intentional. So if my intention with Melissa is gentle, my first pass might be moving my arms slowly and dragging the rope slowly across their body. If my intention is aggressive, that might be interacting with and slapping the body, tightening my arm around them, and then moving the rope across, right? But making sure that you are interacting with positioning their body in ways that are helpful, like using the chin, using the cheeks, using the shoulders, using the arms, using those things while you're tying, changing the position of their body in deference to your body, right? Moving them around in an intentional way that expresses what you're trying to bring to the scene or the interaction that you're having.
One really, I thought useful piece of advice that we were given in a lesson fairly early on was, if you think of the rope as an extension of your hand, meaning you can start with, as Andrew kind of just demonstrated, like your hand on their throat, right? And that's a way of expressing a connection to that person, but also potentially like a form of control and dominance. And then you replace that with the rope there. And it's a reminder of that hand that was there before, right? You're simply extending your capability to touch this person in a lot of different places because you have a lot more rope than you have hands available. By putting a rope there, you free up your hands to move on to other things, but it keeps that person thinking about, oh, the hand was there, right?
And if that touch is done with intentionality, with purpose, with an idea behind it, then the rope becomes a representation of that intentionality as you place it on the body. Does that make sense? Is that something that you think is helpful?
It's a concept, it's hard to keep that in mind while you're also working on these patterns, but if you can just, have that in your mind, come back to it at some point, and try to incorporate it, I think it's a good thing to at least think about. Like, could I replace my hand with rope here, and leave them with that feeling of what my hand was doing before?
Question from the back.
Yeah, or comment.
Maybe just a comment or feedback. I'm in my 6th year of tying, and I'm figuring out how to touch somebody because I've spent a lot of time wanting to make sure that I wasn't violating somebody's consent and all up in their space. And it's been a challenge to kind of allow, get permission from myself and also communicate to the person I'm tying and say, okay, I'm thinking I'm going to just be all up in your space. How do you feel about that? And a lot of times I get that's kind of why I'm here. I'm not here for this medical kind of touching. I'm not trying to touch them necessarily in a sexual way, but it's been a journey in really getting somebody and holding them and realizing they're kind of there for that too sometimes, most of the time.
So
Yeah.
for folks at home, one of our
Might not have
TAs,
heard that. Yeah.
Captain, was expressing that in the 6 years that they're tying, they're just getting to a place where they're comfortable with the touching people as much as they are with the tying people, and that it's been a journey to understand both the implications of consent in and around that, and how to make that okay both for them and the person they're tying. And
it doesn't have to be necessarily a sexual kind of touch. It can be just we're going to be very close, and is that okay? And having that conversation in advance and making sure that everybody's on board, and then going forward with kind of the type of touch that we were talking about.
And the challenging thing, I think that there's something maybe underneath what Captain's saying, but something that I identify with in what Captain is saying that isn't talked about often is, as the person tying, to make that choice of expressing that intention is a pretty vulnerable thing, right? You have to take a piece of you and put it on the person you're interacting with and say, this is who I am and this is what I want, and run the risk of them either not liking or not wanting that thing. And that's pretty like, oh no, I have to be perceived by others. Oh shit, I have to make a choice that then will be judged by others. And that can really inhibit the intention of wanting to do that. It becomes scary to want to push the feelings that you have into the rope that you're tying because they inherently say something about you when you do it, right?
It also requires a level of trust in the person that you are tying, that they will use their words or their body language to tell you that that touch is not okay with them, right? So rather than asking at every moment, is it okay if I touch you here? Is it okay if I touch you here? Is it okay if I touch you in this way? Having the conversation in advance of like, I'm going to be touching you, is that okay? And then allowing them the space to say yes or no as you move forward.
And being explicit with, I'm going to touch you, is that okay? If at any moment I touch you in a way that you do not like, I need you, not I want you, not you should, not if you're comfortable. I need you and expect you to express that that is not okay. It is very important to me that you express that that's not okay. I will be overjoyed and excited that you have the ability to say no to me, right? One of the things that Ordinal said to me really recently that meant a lot to me was, when you say no to me, it means that when you say yes, you really mean it. I know that there's a boundary that you're just not going to acquiesce to anything I ask of you.
There's sort of a bit of a cliche, but like there's a saying of, I can't trust your yes until I can trust your no, right? If you've never said no to me, I don't know that you feel comfortable to do that. When I know that no is ready, and that you are capable of saying it, then I know that those yeses are super powerful.
Yeah, and they mean that much more to me, right? Cool. How did everybody feel about their intentions and feeling the intentions through their time? It's hard. It's hard shit, right? It's not easy. But it's something that I wanted to sort of remind everyone of, because as we get into more technical and more technical tying, that tends to get lost because you're so focused on form and structure and components and making sure that they're proper.
And order of operations.
That you just forget that stuff, right?
Especially as we move more and more technically into the hardest bit, because you have so many systems that you're managing in suspension, it can get really hard to deal with also communicating an emotion, right?
And I would tell you that there are a lot of folks that are like, I don't like suspension.
I can't communicate with
because
my partner.
I can't communicate or communicate intention with them in suspension.
Suspension doesn't work for communicating intention.
And my response
a friend
is,
of ours was like, that's not suspension's fault, that's your fault.
Yeah, my response is, cool, suspension isn't broken, you're broken. You need to practice more.
Right. You have less experience doing that thing, so you're not as good at it.
Yeah.
And that's true for everyone, right?
But if you start thinking about it earlier, it's easier to incorporate.
Yeah.
If you start to think about them as one holistic thing, it's easier to incorporate. All right, let's talk about...
that terrible pattern that we made you talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about...
I said it.
Let's talk about Hishi and Kiku and why I hate this class. But why this class is important. I have, as we discovered yesterday during our outdoor bondage foray, I
And for
have
those
a-
of y'all who didn't come, you missed a good time.
It was great. I have a pretty narrow view of what bondage means.
A definition, if you will.
For me, bondage means restricting a person's limbs in such a way that they cannot move them. So for me, generally, the Hishi pattern that you all learned is not bondage. That is strike one against it.
It's decorative. Like
It's decorative.
It's a body decoration.
It's decorative, but
It can be restricted in that you're definitely compressing some things.
but
But
you
it-
can still slap me and run away with
Right.
your arms, and I don't want that.
Right.
Why do I keep a tie that I don't like or that I might consider cliche as part of this curriculum? It's because I think it teaches two sort of really important things. Thing number one, it is a challenge in managing tension and getting correct tension.
You probably experience this.
In
It's
order
a pain
to-
in the ass.
In order to create a symmetrical pattern, in order to create a balanced pattern, you need to be very effective at managing tension, and oftentimes two tensions at once. This is a pretty tough challenge. So that's bit number one. Bit number two is that Hishi pattern is inherently scalable and changeable in a way that is reflective of both the aesthetic and the sensation goals of the person that is being taught. Every body is
Both
different.
people. So both people together have to come up with what they think both feels and looks good for the person being
Mm-hmm.
tied, right?
Every body physically is different. Everyone's desires about how they want rope to feel and what is physically affirming for them when they have rope on their body is different. And this is a tie that facilitates you making judgments that allow you to lean into those things, right? So
And coming to an agreement between the folks tying and being tied of, I want to emphasize this thing. Does that feel good for you? Right? Like for me, I enjoy having my breasts emphasized. Not everybody feels that way. People with external genitals might want that really emphasized. Other people won't. Right? So having oh yeah.
for me, I have a big tummy. I have big tummy bits. To create a Hishi pattern where there's one knot here and one knot here, and the diamond spreads around my tummy, does not feel fucking great for me. It feels like I'm the biggest fucking blimp in the world.
Right. So if
Right?
if I'm structuring a tie like this, and we may show you this later, but I try to target it so it actually crosses.
So
and
the knot is here,
De-emphasizes.
and it's in my little bed, and
Yeah.
it pushes me in, and I'm like, oh, I feel like a little sexy porchetta.
Yeah. But like it compresses that area rather than emphasizing it. And we're gonna talk about this as we do the harness, but like there are choices that you can make that emphasize or de-emphasize depending on where you put the diamonds, how big the diamonds are, whether you use a diamond at all or like a six-sided, the kiku shape instead. So just quick definitions. Hishi meaning diamond. Kiku is the six-sided, it's like a tortoise
shell.
Right? So it's a hexagon. And that's what those two terms mean, which is why we refer to them
Yeah.
that way.
So I would say we're gonna take a pass of you tying this pattern, and I'm sure you've practiced it as it was
In the video.
demonstrated in the video, right? So this time, as you do it, I want to take 15 or 20 minutes, and I want you to have a conversation with the person you're tying about what they want to feel, and then I want you to have a conversation about what you want it to look like. And I'll give you some context for sort of like understanding of things, right? So if somebody has a very short torso that you want to elongate. So maybe they've got long legs but a short torso, right? And you want to elongate that out. You might have a choice of making a lot more smaller diamonds so it becomes a line and it looks longer on their physical body, right? If somebody has a long body and you want to sort of stretch them out if they want to feel bigger, if they want to feel wider.
Like wider.
You can use larger diamonds and fewer. So think about
And
the
there's-
number of diamonds that you're using and the width.
There's also the idea, as Andrew kind of mentioned with the small ones, like you can do them a lot of very symmetrical, and so they're like in a straight line. But there's also the option of doing like a smaller one here, and then they get progressively larger, so
Right.
that it looks like the person expands like toward the middle. Or conversely, bigger ones at the top and then narrowing down can make them look as if they're like drawing the eye down and inward, as if they're being shrunk in, kind of that hourglass shape more, right? So like depending on how you structure things, it's gonna change the way that people perceive and that you all perceive the body just by changing the lines on the body.
So if you had somebody that really liked both chest compression this way and maybe like the feeling of a corset, you could do a really wide diamond that came here and here, and it did this, and then a bunch of small diamonds which are going to create a bunch of small sidelines, which when you pull them back are going to sort of compress the waistline and compress the body and give the feel of the corset, right? So you have choices that create aesthetic beauty in the person that you're tying, and you have choices that create experience. And all of that comes through the function of managing this tension, which is the thing of the right? So have a quick couple-minute conversation, and then we'll take 20 minutes total to figure out what that tie is.
To do a draft. Again,
And
these
then
are
we'll sort of-
drafts, these are experiments, you're gonna try it. And then
And then
you'll
we'll sort
figure
of
out
go around and talk about
Right.
what our ideas were.
what did you try, what was successful, what feels good or doesn't feel as good for the person in the rope, so that you can do it again and try to iterate on it.
Yeah. So your 20 minutes starts now. everyone is done or close to done with the choices that they have made. Everyone need not discuss the choices. So a couple of caveats before we have this conversation. Caveat number one, everyone need not discuss the discussion or the choices that they made. If you are not comfortable discussing the choices that you made, that's totally fine. Caveat number two, any discussion that we are having about the tie is about the tie in the context of the body it's on, not the person that has been tied.
Not a judgment of the person's body.
Or the shape of their body, or who they are, or anything about them. It is about the intentions that the person who tied wanted to express about aesthetic and sensation, and about how those were accomplished.
And like what the goals were with the tie on this particular body with this person who is being tied.
So please, for the people in the rope, none of these statements are about you. Please do not take them as such. Does anyone want to discuss the choices that they made and why they made them? In the back.
So if folks want to look at what they've done, and so we can all take a look. Yeah.
So we decided that this is a good place of real estate.
Okay.
And so we wanted to sort of use that with the biggest shape and do kind of a reverse burrito thing.
Okay.
And so we did the tortoise shell pattern here, and then we tried to do diamond and smaller diamond. It's not fully symmetrical, but I think it kind of does that thing on the body that you were talking about, and that's why we made those choices.
Sure.
So like an intent of kind of like occupying the décolletage portion
That's right.
of the chest.
So a lot of emphasis placed at the top of the chest and then smaller and like narrowing down toward the waist.
That's the one.
Got it.
So I think-
repeating for folks at home.
I think the bit that I dig, that I think is super cool, is the two lines on the kiku that come above the chest, and the actual fact that they are not quite tensioned to create a straight line, but they create like sort of almost an oval, which is a really like nice shape. And it works really well with like the outfit that you're already wearing, because there's the V of your top and the V of the top of it that makes like a diamond in and of itself. That is like a cool like meta inside the inside thing that I really dig.
Yeah. And I don't know if this was your intention, but it's also like the sort of more oval shape of the kiku is actually then adding to like the curvature of the breast
Yeah.
in a nice way that I feel like is complementary. I don't know if that was an intention. I'm also curious about the sensation you might be feeling, if you're comfortable talking about it, of like the downward pressure at the top of your pec. Was that something that you were noticing?
I honestly wasn't even aware of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something, and we'll talk about this later when we get, or next month when we get to the third rope patterns, variations. But one thing that a lot of folks do find pleasurable is like a downward pressure into the top of the pec. But like people of every anatomy tend to find this pleasurable, like pressure into that part of the body. So I was just curious if that was something you were specifically going for or that you were experiencing.
Yes.
Yeah, how is the sort of like the experiential like sensation portion of it?
I like it a lot. We did notice that this needed some repositioning, so I think that drew more of my attention than some of the others.
Okay.
So when you say needed repositioning at the neck, was it too tight cutting in?
Specifically on the collarbone,
Uh-huh.
because of the bone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bone can be,
This doesn't feel too tight above,
Yeah.
it was more like where it's laying.
right, it's a tricky placement. Often, some people will aim to have a knot kind of in that cleft of the collarbone, but if you get it onto the breastplate, it can start to be too much. So making sure that, you all are communicating about what feels good and what is feeling safe and comfortable as you play with that, because some people don't want that at all, and there are ways to cheat it and have lines that come down this way. Like there are a lot of options, so make sure you're communicating that stuff.
Cool.
Was that all that you all wanted to share?
Yeah.
Cool.
Is anybody else?
Yeah,
All right.
Jess.
Wanted to, she has kind of a generally lightly shaping top, so I wanted to kind of counter that with the diamonds smaller.
Yeah.
She really wanted to kind of emphasize up here with the
Oh.
uh,
So for the folks at home who may not have heard that, again, kind of de-emphasizing the bust and emphasizing the crotch area, was that?
breast bondage.
Oh, you love
Yeah.
breast bondage, so,
So it's compressing. It's more about
Compressing.
compressing it,
Yeah.
right?
okay, got it.
Okay. I mean, I think the thing that I like about it is it's very flattering to the curvature. Like from this direction, if I stand here, it kind of has a nice curve in, and then your hips are sort of nice. Like the midline rope is really nice.
It feels great. I mean, we did this, we practiced this, but like, I don't want to be in that again. I hate this. So, and she even asked, like, is there something you would let me then? Would you let me do differently to flatter your body differently? And I was like, I don't care. I don't want to be in it again. Like, let's talk about it. And so I'm very glad for this exercise today because I feel very differently. I love the way this is feeling right now.
Good.
Awesome. Yeah, the goal of this is not like do that pattern exactly. It's understand the idea of balancing tension and creating shapes with pulling things apart so that you can work with the person and the body that you're tying to emphasize and de-emphasize and create sensation in a way that does feel good and does feel affirming for that person.
What else?
Anything else?
Anybody else?
Yeah. Yeah.
My bottom wanted to have like more of an hourglass, so like
Okay.
accentuate the top and the bottom, and then like feel small waisted,
Okay.
Okay.
or like look small,
Like a cinching at the waist, like
Yeah.
a pulling in at the waist.
Yeah, or just so that's why we did like too large at the bottom, and then like too small.
Okay.
Diamonds in the middle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then she's very comfortable with like
Neck rope.
Like, having-
Okay. So for the folks at home who cannot see, there's a knot right at the neck and then a very large diamond that goes to the outside of the bust, and then comes in sort of at the solar plexus, two small diamonds, and then a much larger one at the crotch. So to really create kind of that corseted look at the waist.
So I
how
would
does
say-
it? Oh, go ahead.
The one bit that I would think might be a little bit helpful, if the idea is to sort of like create that hourglass, is even if you added one more rope and did a kiku on the bottom portion of things, so you were coming around sort of the wider part of the hip,
Yeah,
it's going to give the curvature of the hip a little bit more definition.
yeah.
That's probably my only thought. Otherwise, I think like that's
Yeah, and if I could add a note, another suggestion would be a slight tighter tension at that top diamond. Sorry, at the waist. Yeah, it just looks like the ropes are a little slack
Okay.
there. Yeah, so like you probably could have pulled it even more, like made that diamond, the space between the frictions a little bit smaller, so that could take more tension. Because I feel
Yeah.
like the more what I'm seeing is slack in the tensioning lines. The only way to counter for that would have it be smaller, so that when you pull that, it can get really tight and not lose the shape of the diamond. Yeah.
Well, it was really interesting working with the larger diamonds.
Yeah.
Because you have to go so far down.
Yeah.
It's hard to judge where.
Yes.
And I noticed so much
Uh-huh.
slack as you're pulling it up the back.
Right, yeah.
and the thing to manage, it's not just managing the tension from one side to the other.
It's the tension.
managing the tension of the loop that goes through the body.
Yeah.
Because if it's too tight, if you open this really, really wide,
You're
then
crunching
the
into
person
the
starts to
genitals.
like they start to
Yeah.
do this and this because this is becoming narrower and narrower each time.
Yeah.
And this look isn't always super flattering for anyone.
Yeah, pretty much no one looks great in this look.
It is very comfortable.
I'm sexy. Love me.
I'm strong and powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Does
Anyone
anybody else have
wanna
something they
share?
want to talk about?
Yeah,
Kodiak in the back.
Well, she, for her wants you to have an architect and
Yeah.
training and try to kind of force it down.
yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I really like the kiku. Like, your chest is large, and the kiku has a good the compression that's happening in the framing of it. Yeah, it makes like I mean this in the best possible way. It makes everything look plump
Yeah.
in the best possible way. I'm like that's the only word. And just like, yeah, the compression and the opening is just very.
In an appealing way.
Yeah.
Yeah. How
Um,
does it feel for you?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
Oh, it was really good.
Good.
I really wanted, I wanted this minimized,
Uh-huh.
this accentuated, but skishy.
Yeah.
And the kind of like the bikini, high bikini style.
The one,
Too.
So kind of like a not French cut, Brazilian cut bikini,
Yeah.
like real high, yeah.
It's giving me like Power Girl vibes, if you're
Uh.
familiar with that superhero, with like the bust window, and I love the placement of the kiku sort of at that inner third of the breast tissue. That's two thumbs up. Yeah.
the one note that I would give you, Kodiak, is if you come to the front, your like center line is not quite centered. You're a little curvy in and around there.
Yeah, it's a little more to the right.
Yeah.
I would say like slightly to the right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's almost all like consistently to the right. So just maybe you were slightly off center as you were tying it.
Or I would consider
or-
like, what side are you pulling first?
Right.
Are you always pulling the right side first and then pulling the left side?
Right.
And you may want to alternate that to make sure it balances.
Yeah. Like as you build those, like are you? Yeah.
Anybody else want
Something
to
to
chat
think
about the
about.
top?
Well, just one more note with that, especially because her bust is visible there. You could use the center line of the bust to help you center the rest of the harness. Yeah, using visual cues from the body is really good.
Yeah. Anybody
Anyone
else want
else?
to chat about their top?
No? Okay.
All right. Oh.
I have a joke about the back.
Yeah.
It's one thing that I learned, like, instead of like when you cross around the back, like sometimes it was getting like pulled in one direction. So that was
Yep.
weird. So I was trying to like actually like loop them together so they're kind of like secured on the back.
That's exactly what I'm doing in that video.
Okay.
Yeah. So the comment was when they're circling around the back stem, they sort of try to cross or loop or create friction in the back to help keep the tension even and the stem centered. And my response was, that's exactly what I'm doing in that video. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Brittany.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that like I really wanted, I love this part right here,
Uh-huh.
because it feels very like nice and constricting.
Uh-huh.
But I wanted my breasts emphasized more, and I feel like this isn't doing that. Like I
Okay.
like the pressure, but I would like the same pressure down here.
Okay.
So
So
you might choose two diamonds. So one that starts at the neck and ends sort of right above the breastbone, and then one that goes so that when you're pulling apart, you have a knot that's kind of directly in the middle of the breast. And when you pull apart, you'll have one line that goes under the breast and one line that goes over the breast. And so you're sort of emphasizing in both directions. So if you made,
it would be two.
may I touch you?
Yes.
So if you made this and off.
And this is one thing, since we didn't have you do munter hitches, they're half hitches, you can actually shift and move it if you left
You
it.
have one line going above the breast, one line
Yeah.
going below the breast.
You can adjust slightly to like play around with it.
Then you'll have lines on either side that are emphasizing the breast. Does that make more sense? Is that more
Yes.
what you're going for?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just like wanted like even.
Pressure from above and below.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I like that feeling. That's part of why I like the TK, right? Because we have a top line and a bottom line, bottom wrap. But yeah, creating that same sensation but with different shapes can be interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, comment.
I have a question.
Question.
Yeah.
Is there any version of this tie where you like lock down and like munter hitch these pieces?
So we're gonna talk about other Hishi options after we have a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything that they want to say about the ties that they made before we have a break?
Or like things that you thought didn't work that you want suggestions about, or other options.
Okay, I have one more question.
Yeah.
I think if it's a half inch, it doesn't matter, but like these are like opening. Like
Yeah.
but it doesn't matter. Right?
No, you're fine. They're supposed to have the ability to move.
Yeah, some people do these patterns with
A lot.
munter hitches, and that's much harder both to manage the tension and to tweak it.
Or they will lock off by doing two half hitches so
Yeah.
that the half hitches can't move.
Yeah,
We sort of left this in a place where specifically for the purpose of this discussion, that we could move and adjust things so
Yeah.
people could see.
and one other note about the choices that we made for this pattern is you'll notice that we have you use doubled up rope. Because a lot of people you may see have like just a single rope that they use and they open it. So it's just like one line. I don't find that very aesthetically pleasing, because some places you have it doubled, other places you have a single, and it just tends to look very, for
It's
lack
not-
of a better term, it looks kind of weak against the body, like the amount of rope versus the amount of person is not a good balance to my eye. So I really like the doubled up lines throughout. It makes it harder though because you're managing 2 ropes all the time.
It's not symmetrical, and that drives me crazy.
Question, are you allowed to talk about Hishi that does not go between the legs? Like
Yes.
the dress?
Yeah. We're gonna do that thing. All right. So I would say untie, and we'll take a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
And we're in.
All right.
So we are in the process of creating a couple of different variations of how you might build some diamonds. As you can see on the person I'm tying here, we so far only have one friction, and it is at the neck. So this is a higher context tie. Please only tie this with the permission of the person you are tying to have a knot at their neck. I'm now going to start, I'm at a point where I'm going to start constructing the diamonds. Andrew can talk about what he is doing as that happens.
Yeah, so I am basically done with my tie because I am fast like rabbit.
He is so fast.
One of the ways that you can construct these types of hishis is not necessarily always through pulling tension away or open, but what I would call pulling tension sort of down. So to understand kind of how these constructions happen is that you start off sort of similar to Melissa's. I'm gonna move you this way. Sort of similar to Melissa's by coming up and around this area and then exiting towards the arms. And then the second pass, I am making these half hitches and directionally pulling down across the body, right? And so I'm creating the top parts of these X's and then using the half hitches to create the bottom parts of these X's. Right? What does the back look like? The back looks like that. So the great thing about these, like part of I hate hishis when it's just like, here's a hishi form on the body, right? I kind of love hishis as part of actual bondage where you're restricting the person because as I mentioned before, it feeds into my like, ooh, this is super symmetrical, geometrical. Like if I can make it look really nice and balanced on the front and then still make it look really nice and balanced and symmetrical on the back, that feeds the little obsessive compulsive heart that's inside of me. So for me, there are some general goals that I have with these ties aesthetically and how I try to balance them to the person. So this is a harder tie, like unlike that body harness, this is a harder tie to individuate for a person because the structure of it is pretty much set, right? How do I then sort of geometrically locate that on a person's body generally? I use the nipples. So for me, the goal that I have, ideally, and this isn't in this tie, so I feel bad about it. Also, you can't really see this half hitch very well. But for me, like, I back away from this, and I am grumpy at myself for the way that I have it, right? So ideally, I would want one line with all the half hitches straight down, and I would want one line that bisects the nipple, and that has both of these half hitches even, right? So I would want this half hitch to be here-ish, and I would want this one to be here-ish, right? They're not matching. And then I would want these to be equal level. I would want these to be equal level, right? So it's creating a symmetry based on the body that you're tying, but that is created by the pattern that you tie. Make sense? The way you locate that on a body is sort of a choice that you make aesthetically. But to me, like, oh, this is bondage and this is hishi, I love this. Right up until I look back at it and say like, well, I fucked this up. This person looks great. And then I went and ruined it with my crappy tie. So, my apologies. Everything was great until I fucked up.
So I put shitty rope on you.
Yeah. Apologies for my shitty rope. Any questions about this?
This was with one rope, not two, right, at the same time?
Yeah, this sort of starts in a singular direction and connects rope in the same way that you would make a hands behind tie like a TK or any of those.
So you're not pulling apart to create the form,
Yeah.
you're building the diamonds as you go.
Yeah, yeah.
By like creating diagonals and then bisecting them with other diagonals.
Yeah. Any other questions?
How's that feeling? Okay.
Cool. Would you be okay if somebody untied? Does somebody want to untie?
And you can do it off camera.
Yeah,
You don't
I would
have to
say
do it on
move off
camera. Yeah. So meanwhile, I'm still constructing diamonds because I am not as fast as Andrew. But sort of similar concept, and you can kind of see it as I do it because it's in process. But similar idea of like, I'm sort of framing the breast by aiming for the nipple. So as I'm coming around and bisecting this diagonal line, I'm going to create another muncher hitch and start to build out those diamonds. And you can see like this last line is going to come across and it's going to create a bunch of different diamonds on my body.
So these are contextually more difficult to envision as patterns because they don't have, like, in the pull apart diamond that we taught you, it's sort of easy to envision like, oh, here's where the diamond's going to be, I will pull it apart, the diamond will be in that place. In both of these patterns, you're creating sort of like half of the direction, and then you have to come in and create the other half to balance out what the diamond is.
And they're very hard because you have to get a lot of very closed munchers to
Yeah.
make it look good.
Yeah.
And all, like, so technically challenging, sort of envisioning it is challenging, making sure your tensions are right is challenging. Like, these are highly technical, not that the other ones aren't, but it's just harder to envision and get the technicalities of it right.
And this is why we offer this to you as a bonus add-on, as opposed to here's what you need to learn for class, because we don't want to make it more difficult than it needs to be. Any questions generally? So, sort of the goal for everyone, and you'll have some open tie time once Melissa's done with her tie, but the goal for next month will be to work with the person that you're tying for next month. They may be the person who's in this room, they may be someone different. To take that first draft that you created in today's class of like, oh, here's what's going to both feel good and what we think will look good in a Hishi, and like, cool, I'm gonna iterate and come up with sort of like my ideal goal Hishi. Does that make sense?
One more thing we want to talk about before we move away from this is the option to create the Hishi without going through the crotch.
Yeah.
Right? Die cuffs?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the great thing about both of these is that they make the Hishi without going through the crotch, right?
Right. But even the pattern that you all had, there are ways to do it without going through the crotch.
Yeah.
So that's
So let me-
another option.
I will may I demonstrate on you when they're done untying. Ooh. There you go. Thank you.
This is a great option if you are tying to someone who either doesn't want genital interaction or who finds emphasizing that area of their body unpleasurable or uncomfortable for some reason. Andrew, do you want to
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. Do you want it?
I didn't know if you needed to keep monitoring. Okay. So I'll just type for those. So, for not interacting with the crotch, you're going to start the same way.
Just quickly, I'm going to show this is the essentially finished pattern. So we have a lot of diamonds in the front and the back. I sort of replicated the hexagon that you all may be familiar with to finish out. But it's, you know, these running cuffs that we talked about when we did bamboo to the arms, and then building the diamonds to create the front. So this is essentially the finished pattern for this one. Again, a way to construct diamonds rather than pulling them open. Thank you so much. Does anyone want to untie this one?
And then I will demonstrate the Hishi without going through the crotch. So the same two lines. You will half hitch down. I don't know that I've ever tied this pattern on ordinals before. So this will be a complete
New experience for everyone.
new experience for everyone. I'm going to make some decisions. We will see how those decisions turn out. they don't want that decision. I will have that decision.
I've created a very high pressure situation for Andrew now, with volunteering.
Yeah. The good thing is, this person doesn't have any opinions on road.
None.
So,
That's the ordinals I know. Zero opinions.
I don't
Sounds
give a
right.
shit about anything.
none,
Complete nihilist.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Well, that's true, but that means everything matters.
so, I'm gonna go with 3. I'm gonna go with my 3, right? And I've gotten down to the crotch region.
What would go through the crotch?
I don't want to interact with the crotch region. So I'm gonna go around, underneath the buttocks, get like a little bit of lift and separate action.
So still crotch adjacent, but not like into labia or
It's not framing.
actual genitals.
And I'm gonna create a leg cut. I'm gonna come up. Can you hold this on a minute? Munter hitch. Munter hitch. Then go up the body,
To start to create that stem in the back.
create the stem in the back.
Did you want your hip on the top?
Yeah.
Okay.
Diecast, I would not consider that a diecast, that's more like a hip
A thigh wrap,
thing, right?
right? Going around the thigh rather than directly through the groin. Is essentially, you could do whatever you want here. It's just a different direction for the rope to go. Instead of straight through, go around the sides. You could do 2 passes to create a cuff there. You could do this, a single line. It's up to you. All of this is gonna be improvised at a certain point. So, and this is improvised on our behalf right now, right? So Ojiman is making this up kind of on the fly. Not only has he never tied ordinals in this, he's never tied this particular version of this. But sort of encouraging you all to get a little creative with what you want to do. In case you don't want it, you or the person you're tying don't want interaction straight through the groin, especially if the person you're tying has external genitals. It can be uncomfortable to have rope running straight through there. You might need to split or go around. This is a way that you don't even have to worry about it.
If the initial pattern was like a vintage high-cut swimsuit, this is more like the play suit or the romper version of
Right.
that thing.
Or like the old school, like not bikini.
Yeah.
Like the low cut, like vintage kind of 50s, 60s swimsuit style.
So I am doing a chest tissue smash on ordinals.
It's a trademark move. You heard it here first.
Well, so it's not quite, the thing that I'm doing is not quite above the breast, and it's not quite below the chest, but it's sort of smashing down on the chest.
It's almost compression, right?
Which in my knowledge is a thing that
Breast tissue compression.
ordinals is fond of.
The rope is crossing, like if you think about the anatomy of the nipple and areola, it is under the nipple but on the areola.
It's difficult to get the smash right there, because the rope wants to go to underneath the chest
Yeah.
tissue.
Mhm.
And so the smash, I've further made this difficult for myself by not just tying a pattern I've not ever tied before, and not just tying on a person that I've never tied before,
Like this pattern on before.
by doing it in a
Tied
way
before.
that I've never done it before. Because fuck me for forever.
So why make it even easy? We want you all to get the maximum
You wanna hate this night.
awkwardness possible.
Well, but also I want to, part of the choice for this is I want you to understand that, just like all of you, I am still dealing with first drafts of this shit. Right? Whenever I try something new, I have a first draft iteration process of, well, this is unpleasant, to this is functional.
Or, I like this, but that's not sustainable, or that's not repeatable, or, like, there are a ton of reasons why one version isn't gonna work. And you have to keep trying until if you like it enough, or you like the idea enough, you have to keep trying to find the one that you do enjoy and that is repeatable.
And so for me, to give an example, I really like that Hojo Hishi tie, and I really like a Tengu tie, like the arms like this.
Like bent up, folded.
I worked on a Hojo Hishi that would do that for 4.5 years, 5 years, before I got to a pattern that I liked. Can you hold this guy on the side?
We've established another reason why this does not count as bondage for Andrew, which is that I am holding pieces of rope while he ties other stuff.
Which is bullshit.
It's assisted.
Tell us how you really feel.
To be fair, you could do this with the person's like arms up above, right? Or like tied here. There's a position that some people will refer to as a bunny ears, or a wakizarashi, a pillow hand, right? Where the hands are up and behind the head or behind the neck. That could be an option where then you would still have access to their torso and legs, but their hands are bound. And to me, that would be bondage. But for sake of this class, that is not what we're doing.
Yeah.
But like for instance, because there is a point, you could do a single or a double column for their wrists and have them attached to a point while you're doing all of this. To me, that would be bondage, right?
Also a point at which, so we come back down to the thighs, you could actually be adding lines sort of across to compress or obscure the genitals.
Yep.
So this is very much a sort of like choose your own adventure. This could become like sort of a mini dress or like a hobble skirt situation.
And now I'm,
For people who do have external genitals and enjoy compression, you can create sort of almost like, what?
Yeah, tucking briefs.
Yes, tucking briefs, or in Japanese clothing, there's a garment called a fundoshi, which is kind of like their underwear. That's like a panel that goes through the crotch and like covers. So yeah, similar like a tucking situation where you can create lines of rope that will tuck the genitals back and behind. So there are so many options. For people who want the external genitals emphasized, you can create like the diamond right there and like wrap around, or even tuck the penis up and into the tie, and expose the underside, which is very sensitive for more play options. Like you have tons of choices here, just depending on negotiating with the person you are tying, what feels good for them, what you all want to do with it when it's done. Right?
So I've now used a couple of different techniques that we leverage in creating
So many diamonds.
So many diamonds.
diamonds.
But also compression in the breast tissue, which Ordinals enjoys, some emphasis at the tummy, but like, again, sort of elongating them, compressing in, creating emphasis at the groin, not going through the labia, because what if you don't want to? But still making stuff decorative so it does draw the eye to that part of the anatomy. Yeah, lots of choices.
And then working on all of this
To clean
to
it up in the
hopefully
back.
get to a place where the back sort of also doesn't look like garbage.
Yeah.
So you've got, that is a rough draft. Like,
Yeah.
that is me doing that thing that you just did based on the premise of, I don't want this to go through my crotch.
Yep.
I want these things for ordinals. I want these sensations. Here's what I know about rope. Here's what I can create on the fly, right?
And one thing to consider, once you feel like, oh, I have like a front and a back that I like, is, I don't know if you all noticed, as ordinals turn to the side, there's some sort of angles happening here also. You might consider like, what if I made decoration on the side of the body, right? Like, this is another whole plane on either side that you could play with as well, if you so choose, if that feels fun for y'all. But just, bodies are not two-dimensional, right, front and back, but we have 3-4 sides that you can play with.
The other thing that I did with the chest smash that I didn't talk about is these lines are together, but these lines are separated.
Meaning like
And in
a,
separating them, I get more chest smash.
Mhm.
So in knowing that that was the goal that I had for ordinals, I widen these out to get more chest smash.
right, and
Does that
so
make sense?
what he means is rather than the two passes being,
Together.
together, like horizontal together, he created like an angle, almost like the point of a spear or an arrow toward the nipple, toward the center line of the body, which creates that pressure in.
This is also really fun if you're someone who packs. This sort of pattern can be a really fun way to attach and emphasize that choice when you're playing.
Or if you self-tie or want to attach a strap-on, you could create a pattern strong enough to then use your strap-on into the harness, right? Rather than having like panties or a leather harness, you can create a rope harness to use for play.
This becomes a really stable thing to attach a strap onto.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the back of the mold here.
Would you, as you're building that out, would you use twisted shafts also?
Yeah. Yeah, so for me,
What was the question?
so the question is, would you use twist and shouts? Would you use, so for me, and kind of the point of this demonstration in a lot of ways comes around to what I hope you will all walk away from this experience with, which is I just have I don't consider myself as to be somebody who ties of a style, and I am not interested in imparting a style to you. There are stylistic choices that we have made that we think will be helpful for your learning, but those aren't those are functional, those aren't endorsements. So for me, I have all of these different tools that are for problem solving or for creating solutions. And when somebody suddenly says to me, oh, hey, let's do a tie where it doesn't go directly through the crotch and has a bunch of diamonds, I just start digging through tools, right? And as the tie starts to come together, in my mind, this is not what I was envisioning. In my mind, I'd gotten about as far as this, right? And then as you start to make decisions on someone's body and you're tying, cool, I'm gonna compress my chest. Okay, that closes certain doors, but it opens other doors. Okay, well, these choices have gone away. These choices now exist. Okay, then I'm gonna make the next choice. That opens doors and closes doors, opens doors and closes doors. And I have tools where I'm like, oh, I need to use this because this is how this fits this next choice, right? And for me, I would hope that the thing that you're looking to develop is that solution set and that solution approach, because that's what helps you build things for the people that you're tying and not try to smash people into the ties that you already have.
And to kind of circle back to the question of could you use twist and shouts rather than muncher hitches? Absolutely, right? They're going to be yet an additional tension challenge to construct and have that hold in the same way. I have only learned these patterns using either muncher hitches or half hitches, so that's not where my mind goes. But that does not mean that you could not choose to do that, right? That's another tool in your toolkit I hope you will use if you find it helpful. And let us know how it goes if you try.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of how I sort of determine, if I'm iterating towards something better, is am I choosing the right, is this the optimum solution for this thing? And if I do it again, if I make a different choice, is that better? Is that more optimum or less optimum? Is that sort of better fit the person in the tie, or does it not?
Does it make it harder to construct or harder for them to sustain, or is it harder for me to remember what I did by choosing to sometimes use a half hitch, sometimes use a muncher, sometimes use a twist and shout? Is it easier for me to do it when I know, oh, it's just all munchers, and then I don't have to remember, well, that one was a twist and shout and that one was a muncher.
So we've come to this weird full circle place at the end of the class where I hate Hishis. These things have nothing to do with bondage. I agree with your frustration, but also packaged within all of this stuff is sort of the philosophy of what I hope you'll take away from all of these classes and how to tie.
I think we still have another question.
Oh, with the question, I was gonna say for people who do
Yeah.
So the comment was, not only are these good for strap-ons, but you could also do for pet players, you could add a tail.
All right.
So homework.
Homework
uh,
is to use any and all of these techniques to work on what is the sensation and aesthetic for the person that you're tying. Like what is the as close to ideal diamond outcome for that person
Or kiku,
or kiku
or some other version that you
or
wanna
some other
try.
version.
Yeah.
And this
But-
is
But do try to have at least one of those things. We gave this assignment in, I wanna say it was 8th cell, and the person came back and was like, well, I don't really like diamonds, so I didn't do any. And we were like, no, that, you have misunderstood
The one-
assignment.
the one structural requirement is that there needs to be a diamond.
At least a diamond or kiku, singular, just one, but like, please do that thing, at least once.
This is not chaos rope, but thoughtful.
Right.
There's something specifically bounding it, right?
But to emphasize the person and the aesthetic that you two agree is what they want to emphasize, has the sensation that they want to experience, and is like optimized for that person, or at least a draft toward what you think is optimized for that person. And when we come in next time, we will take a look at them.
Yeah,
Is that what
we're gonna do that. There is not a pattern for this month because next month is gonna be third rope variations.
And one note about third rope variations is that, there's not a video. Part of the process of this is getting you all ready to attend other people's classes where you don't get to take video. There's not a video. You have to watch them do it and then try to replicate it. So we're gonna give you a bunch of options. You're just gonna have to look at how it's done and then try to like reverse engineer it.
And we will need some
Volunteers.
volunteers to be tied.
Yeah, we will try to coordinate this in advance to make sure we have enough people on hand.
Yeah. But it will literally be
We will tie
the-
several things.
the back of every single tie will look exactly like the third rope that you have tied, and the front will be entirely different.
Right, so it's gonna build off of the 2 rope that you already know. It's gonna have that hexagon finishing that you already know, but the way to get there is slightly different.
And so you'll need
it's gonna
to-
be up to you all to understand, or try to like reverse engineer it, like I said, to understand how to get to there. Based on what you see, the components you already know. It's not gonna have components that you haven't seen before. And how do you get to there?
So baby steps to reverse engineering, baby steps to observation, baby steps to making notes,
Note taking.
because as you go out into the world, like, this is shit that you're gonna have to do. Cool?
So be prepared, bring some note taking materials. You can use your phone or your, notepad.
And think
whatever.
about, take some personal time and reflection and think about, like, cool, what's the best way you absorb this thing? What's the best way to make sure that this sticks in your mind?
Some people are very good at sketching. I am not. Andrew's pretty good at it. So like, do you have written words that help you to remember? Do you have, take a photo of it? If
Do you have a
that's
shorthand?
allowed, is there a shorthand? Is like, how do you?
Like, I have, like, little shorthands for X friction and L
Yeah.
friction and half
Right.
hitch and, like, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I use T plus S as a twist and shout, right? Like, I know what that means, but I know what it means. Other people might not understand that.
When I die and you go through my rope logs, you'll have no idea what I meant.
It's a real Da Vinci situation.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's like the shittiest Da Vinci Code since Da Vinci Code.
Any questions as we wrap up? We have like 2 minutes.
I have a comment.
Yeah?
Yeah.
First, I want to say, Andrew, thank you for sharing your experience earlier and
Oh.
vulnerability. And then I want to say, as we talk about the intention thing, what I think is very valuable is the reason why we're doing this show is to interact with one another and to see the rope as a tool of how you interact. And I think that could be just helpful in that extending onto the extension of yourself.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, for those at home who maybe didn't hear, the comment was thanking Andrew for disclosing the injury that was sustained during his lesson last week, and like for being vulnerable in that way, and then emphasizing the fact that we're all doing this to connect with our partner, and sort of restating that like we're doing this to be connected to one another. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that rope is a tool.
Regarding intention, I just wanted to make a comment that I
frustrating for another. Or like, I know that like my sad is angry for others, and vice versa. So it's like very important to like acknowledge that what your feelings are might not necessarily correspond to like what someone else is feeling.
And so
Absolutely.
this is
Should we
okay.
just,
Yeah. So the comment was the way that people display intentions and emotions are interpreted differently by those outside of themselves.
Right.
So somebody sad might be somebody else's angry was one of the examples that was given.
Yeah.
And for us, this is why it's not. There are a lot of people that approach rope that as they tie someone else, they're like, I make this person feel sad, or I make them feel humiliated, or I make them feel shame, or I make them do something else, right? And for me, to your point, all of that intention and emotion is interior, right? It is me, it is my representation of that thing. If the person I'm tying knows me, they might understand that representation. But that is all interior to me. I don't make anyone feel anything. I can't make anybody feel anything. Like, I do a thing and they feel something, and those things are coincidental, maybe coordinated if you're lucky.
They're related but not causational.
But to think that you're going to tease out a very specific emotion from somebody else based on a thing that you do is really, really, really hard, because you don't experience those emotions in the same way. To my point, me seeing somebody being like, I created shame, that might not be what that person's feeling, but that's what I'm seeing, and that's what I think shame should look like, right? And I'm not super invested in people having inauthentic emotions in that way. So that's part of the reason why for all of these exercises, it is like, as the person tying, I make a choice about what my internal intention is, and then in as much as I can, I try to communicate that to someone, right?
I think a major part of learning to tie, and a major part of me learning to tie, has been getting to a place where I have enough confidence to do a thing and step back and actually see what the person's response to that is, where I'm not constantly focusing on the rope and what my hands are doing, what the next step is. So creating space to observe.
And I think to this point, like, this is why I find it so important to like really be vulnerable in a debrief with the person that you did that thing with, because there's so many times, like you said, you think you're making them feel a certain way, and they might look like they're feeling that way, but they interpreted it completely differently. And if you can talk about that after, you can adjust for the next time.
So the comment was in a debrief talking about what someone's intentions looked like, or what someone's emotions looked like versus what their interiority was and what they were feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
So that you have an understanding of what you saw and what they actually felt, and you can start to connect those dots a little bit more.
All right, so we need to get up and out of here so we can have food before Selects. Thank you so much for your kind attention.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for the Discord stuff. Please attempt to be as prompt as possible for next month. I appreciate it. Don't forget to get stickers on the way out of the door.
Yeah, they're on the
Do you
table.
wanna show up with them?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn that shut off.
Okay.
One second, let's let